Tensions between Washington and Tehran continue to escalate, with Iran's air defense system taking center stage. Iranian state media reports that the country's air defenses are on high alert, though the exact extent of this readiness remains unclear. Military analysts doubt that Iran's network could reliably withstand a potential U.S. air campaign. Iran describes its air defense as a multi-layered system, integrating long-range, medium-range, and short-range platforms into a unified defensive network. However, the effectiveness of this network against U.S. stealth aircraft and precision-guided munitions cannot be independently verified. The analysis relies on statements from Iranian state media, Western reports on defense, and analyst assessments. Iran's approach to air defense aims to prevent enemy forces from achieving air superiority over major cities and strategic infrastructure. Over the past decade, the Iranian military has built a multi-layered system combining capabilities across different ranges. The goal of this system is to create overlapping coverage, complicating attack planning, and forcing adversaries to commit more resources to any air campaign. The actual effectiveness of a multi-layered defense depends on various factors, including equipment quality, operator training, and system integration. Analysts note that Iran's defensive approach is designed to increase costs rather than guarantee complete air denial. The difference between complicating an attack and actually preventing it is significant for understanding how these systems might perform in a real-world conflict scenario. Some sources suggest Iran is seeking S-400 capabilities, but there is no reliable public confirmation of operational S-400 deployment in Iran. The S-400 is a Russian long-range air defense system, and reports of Iran's potential interest should be treated as unconfirmed speculation. Russian officials have affirmed defense cooperation with Iran, but specific claims of S-400 delivery or deployment are not supported by independent sources or official statements. Even if Iran acquires advanced air defense systems like the S-400, no single system can guarantee absolute protection against a determined adversary. Advanced adversaries, such as the U.S., develop tactics and technologies specifically designed to counter known defensive capabilities. Russia completed the delivery of S-300 air defense systems to Iran in 2016. This delivery was one of the few confirmed elements of Iran's air defense network verifiable from public sources. The S-300 PMU-2 provides medium to long-range air defense capabilities and was considered a significant acquisition for Iran at the time of delivery. However, this system now represents older technology, and its effectiveness against modern threats, including stealth aircraft and advanced cruise missiles, is assessed as limited by some Western analysts. Iranian officials have stated that the S-300 is fully operational and integrated into their defensive network, but the actual readiness and current capabilities of these systems cannot be independently confirmed from public sources. Maintaining advanced air defense systems requires continuous support, spare parts, and ongoing training. How well Iran has maintained its S-300 network over time, and whether it remains fully combat-ready, is publicly unknown with certainty. Iran has also developed an indigenous long-range air defense system called Bavar-373. Mobile launchers reportedly provide protection against aircraft, drones, and certain classes of ballistic missiles at a range of approximately 200 kilometers. According to Iranian state media statements, Sayad-4 interceptors associated with the Bavar-373 are capable of engaging fifth-generation fighter jets at high altitudes. However, Western analysts express skepticism regarding Iranian claims about the ability of indigenous systems to counter advanced stealth aircraft. The assertion that any system can reliably detect and engage fifth-generation fighters is disputed, given the specialized design features of such aircraft. Iran also employs Khordad-15 batteries to protect major cities and airbases from aircraft, unmanned systems, and low-flying cruise missiles. According to Iranian state media descriptions, the Khordad-15 represents Iran's medium defensive layer, designed to fill gaps between strategic long-range defense and point defense systems. Iranian officials have stated that the Khordad-15 is capable of detecting and engaging stealth targets, including cruise missiles and advanced drones. However, the actual detection and engagement capabilities against such targets have not been publicly demonstrated or independently verified. Iran's air defense system is a complex, multi-layered structure designed to protect against various threats. Medium-range systems like the Khordad-15 are intended to bridge the gap between strategic long-range defense and point defense of specific assets. Short-range launchers form inner rings around key bases and facilities, tasked with destroying low-flying drones and incoming cruise missiles that penetrate outer defensive layers. These short-range systems provide point defense of critical infrastructure as a last line of defense. Anti-aircraft guns and man-portable air defense systems create dense, short-range fire zones around vital infrastructure and military centers. These systems represent the final layer of defense against penetrating threats and rely on volume of fire. Iran claims to use VHF and ultra-long-range detection radars to improve early warning and detection of incoming threats. Nationwide radar coverage is intended for comprehensive early warning and tracking of potential threats. Passive systems track targets covertly by listening for their electronic emissions, helping maintain situational awareness without revealing their positions through active radar transmissions. A nationwide integrated air defense command links Iran's major radar stations and surface-to-air missile units into an integrated command structure. Iranian officials assert that this network provides continuous 24/7 surveillance of the country's airspace and enables rapid response to threats. The effectiveness of any air defense network depends not only on individual systems, but also on how well they are integrated into a cohesive defensive structure. Command and control links between radar positions and missile batteries determine how quickly threats can be detected, tracked, identified, and engaged. Western analysts raise concerns, noting that integrating disparate air defense systems presents significant technical challenges for Iran. This specifically refers to combining Russian imports, such as the S-300, and indigenous developments like the Bavar-373. How successfully Iran has achieved seamless integration remains unclear. Considering electronic warfare aspects also significantly impacts the assessment of Iran's defense capabilities. In the event of an attack, command links would most likely be targeted to disrupt network coordination in the initial phases of the strike. However, the resilience of Iranian networks to electronic attacks and jamming remains unknown. US stealth platforms, such as the B-2 and F-35, are designed to penetrate dense air defenses by minimizing their radar signature. Although the B-21 is still in testing and not yet operational, these aircraft represent the cutting edge of US air power capabilities. US electronic warfare assets aim to blind or confuse Iranian radars and sever command links in the early hours of any major strike. According to military analysts, degrading air defenses before and during strikes is a standard component of US air campaign doctrine. The combination of stealth aircraft, electronic warfare platforms, and precision-guided munitions represents capabilities specifically designed to overcome multi-layered air defenses, similar to those Iran has built. However, how effectively Iran's network could respond to such threats is a matter of debate among military analysts. Many Western analysts argue that Iran's defenses could raise the cost and complexity of any air campaign, but differ on the extent of their effectiveness. No one can confirm the actual performance of Iranian systems without combat data. The consensus among many Western analysts is that Iran's network is unlikely to completely prevent a determined U.S. offensive. However, this assessment is based on analysis, modeling, and historical precedents, not on confirmed performance data from actual combat. Iranian officials dispute Western assessments, claiming their defenses are sufficient to deter or defeat any attack. This represents Iranian deterrence messaging, which serves important purposes regardless of the reality of underlying capabilities. Iran's air defense network can serve deterrence purposes, even if its actual defensive capability against a determined U.S. attack is limited. By demonstrating some defensive capabilities and projecting uncertainty about outcomes, Iran aims to increase the perceived costs of any attack. Deterrence succeeds if potential attackers decide that the costs and risks outweigh the benefits. Regardless of whether defensive measures would succeed in repelling an attack, Iran's public systems and stated capabilities contribute to deterrence calculations in Washington and other capitals. The uncertainty itself can serve Iran's strategic interests. Iranian military capabilities are under intense scrutiny from the international community. If an adversary is uncertain about the effectiveness of defenses, they must plan for larger, more resource-intensive operations, which can lead to greater risk and criticism from the international community. However, deterrence proves ineffective if the adversary chooses to act despite the perceived costs. Iranian state media regularly publish information about the country's military capabilities, which serves both deterrence messaging and domestic political purposes. These descriptions represent Iran's preferred narrative, not objective assessments of actual capabilities. Claims about indigenous systems' ability to engage fifth-generation fighters or provide comprehensive coverage should be viewed as messaging, not established fact. International military analysts are skeptical of Iranian claims, noting significant discrepancies between promotional descriptions and observed or assessed capabilities. However, Iran's exact capabilities remain uncertain due to limited independent observation and a lack of recent combat testing. For observers, the appropriate approach is to acknowledge that Iranian capabilities likely lie somewhere between Iran's maximalist claims and the most skeptical Western assessments. Uncertainty necessitates caution in drawing firm conclusions. Analysts believe that a typical air campaign against a country with multi-layered air defenses would target air defense systems, radar positions, and command links first. However, this is a general pattern, not confirmed U.S. planning for a specific scenario with Iran. Suppressing enemy air defenses is standard doctrine to enable subsequent operations. Air defense systems themselves would likely be priority targets in any protracted campaign. According to general military doctrine, destroying or degrading defensive capabilities in the initial phases creates conditions for subsequent operations with reduced risk. Iran has consistently emphasized that any attack would provoke responses beyond defensive measures. Ballistic and cruise missile capabilities provide Iran with offensive response options that do not depend on successful defense of its airspace. Asymmetric capabilities, including regional proxies and unconventional tools, provide additional response options. Iran's deterrence relies on the threat of retaliation as much as or more than active air defense. Therefore, Iran's defensive capabilities are not the sole factor determining its strategic posture. Air defense is only one part of Iran's broader strategic concept. Ayatollah Khamenei's recent warning of a regional war underscores this broader framework. Iran's defense concept involves not only air defense, but also retaliation in the event of an attack, which could lead to escalation. Any conflict involving the U.S. and Iran would occur within a complex regional context with far-reaching consequences. U.S. forces are based in the Persian Gulf region, and these facilities could be subject to Iranian retaliation. Countries hosting U.S. forces face difficult choices: risk involvement in a conflict or not. Iranian missile capabilities pose a threat to regional bases, creating vulnerabilities that influence host nations' calculations. The regional aspect adds complexity to both U.S. planning and Iranian deterrence calculations. Escalation could affect multiple countries and potentially draw in additional actors with their own interests. Energy infrastructure, shipping lanes, and regional stability are at risk in the event of a conflict. The economic and political costs of any exchange would be significant and extend far beyond direct military effects. Both sides face significant uncertainties when assessing a potential conflict. The U.S. cannot know exactly how Iranian defenses would perform until tested in combat. Iran also cannot know exactly how effective its systems are against U.S. capabilities. Neither side can be entirely certain about how a conflict will unfold, especially in its early stages. Historical experience from past conflicts shows that air defense performance often deviates from expectations. Systems can behave differently under real combat conditions. The fog of war affects both offense and defense. Final outcomes depend on many factors, including equipment reliability and operator performance. Military positioning occurs in parallel with diplomatic activity. Turkey has offered to mediate between the U.S. and Iran, and regional powers are urging both sides to exercise restraint. The military postures of both sides serve informational and signaling purposes. Demonstrations of capabilities and resolve influence negotiations and perceptions. The relationship between military positioning and diplomatic outcomes is complex and difficult to predict. Military pressure can either facilitate or complicate diplomacy. The current situation involves both military and diplomatic tracks unfolding simultaneously. Which track ultimately determines the outcome depends on decisions yet to be made. Iran's air defense capabilities remain uncertain despite extensive analysis. Iranian statements may exaggerate capabilities, and Western assessments are based on modeling rather than verified data. In confronting Iranian systems, it becomes clear that any potential conflict would entail significant costs and risks for all parties involved. Even if U.S. forces achieve air superiority, which most experts expect, the consequences would be widespread and difficult to predict, including retaliation from Iran, escalation of regional tensions, and disruption of economic stability. The military balance plays an important role, but it is not the sole factor determining political outcomes. Decisions to initiate actions and responses to them ultimately determine the course and resolution of any crisis. For those closely following developments, key questions remain. What is the true effectiveness of Iranian defense? How prepared are the U.S. for prolonged operations? What will Iran's reaction be? And what will the escalation of the conflict in the region look like? These uncertainties continue to be relevant as the crisis unfolds.